Welcome to Calm Before Dreams. A quiet place where gentle stories unfold slowly, and where each moment softens the day behind you. Here, the world moves at an unhurried pace, and the past opens its doors in the calm glow of evening. Tonight, I will take you with me into a softly lit ballroom in Victorian society, where candlelight trembles against tall mirrors, where silk brushes lightly across polished floors, and where every glance, every pause, every gesture carries meaning beneath the surface. Before the evening begins, I find myself wondering where you are listening from tonight. Perhaps a quiet room in a distant city, perhaps a small town already wrapped in darkness, perhaps somewhere where the night air is cool and still. If you wish, you can share your country or city below. It is always comforting to imagine a quiet circle of listeners spread across the world, all settling into the same calm moment together. Now, let us slow things down. I take a quiet breath and imagine the hush of velvet curtains hanging along tall walls. Somewhere beyond them, a violin is being tuned, its notes rising softly, then fading again. Footsteps move across distant hallways as guests prepare to enter the room. The sound is gentle, almost rhythmic, like a quiet tide moving through the building, and as the evening opens, I step into a world where manners are a language, where reputation is shaped in whispers rather than declarations, and where the smallest gesture can say more than a page of words. Tonight's story explores the secrets of etiquette in the Victorian Ballroom, but this will not feel like a lesson, and it will not be a list of rules. Instead, I will simply walk through one long winter evening, noticing the quiet details that shaped social life in that time. The soft pressure of gloves against the skin. The careful way a greeting is offered. The subtle choreography that unfolds long before the music even begins. You will not need to remember everything. Nothing here asks for effort. All that matters is the feeling of the room, the warmth of candlelight, the hush of velvet halls, the slow rhythm of footsteps across polished wood. And by the time the night fades, you will have felt what it is like to move through a ballroom where reputation is never shouted, only gently placed, like a folded note left on a silver tray. Before I go any farther, I let the story wait at the threshold, like a guest who has arrived a little early and is content to linger in the anteroom. I want my mind to arrive in the same gentle way, without haste, without grabbing at details, without trying to perform. The evening will be there, steady and patient, and I can take my time reaching it. I imagine the small, familiar comforts that make a body feel safe enough to soften. The weight of a shawl resting over my shoulders, not heavy, just present, like a quiet hand. The warmth that gathers beneath it, slow as candlelight warming a corner of a room. I picture my hands resting where they naturally fall, palms open, fingers loose, as though they have remembered how to stop holding on. My jaw unhooks slightly. My tongue settles. My brow smooths, as if it has been told it no longer needs to watch the door. I breathe in, and I don't demand that the breath be deep. I simply allow it to be unhurried. In and out, with a calm pause between, a little space where nothing is required. On the next breath, I let my shoulders drop a fraction, just enough to signal to myself that the night is not a task. It is an easing. It is a slow folding away of the day. When I think of a ballroom, I do not start with the crowd. I start with the quiet before the crowd, the moment when the room is prepared and waiting, when the polished floor reflects the chandelier's glow but has not yet been crossed by shoes, when the air still holds more beeswax and linen than perfume. I picture the velvet curtains drawn close, their color deepened by lamplight. I picture tall mirrors standing in their gilded frames, ready to multiply every flame into a soft constellation. Somewhere nearby, musicians tune their instruments with careful patience. A single note rises, wavers, and then resolves. Another follows, like a thread being tested for strength. The sound is not yet music. Not quite, but it carries the promise of rhythm, and rhythm has always been a kind of comfort. It tells the body what to do without forcing it, and it tells the mind where to rest. I let my eyes grow heavy in the imagination of it. Not asleep, not yet, only quieted, as though they have found a dimmer room. In my mind, the lamps are lowered. The conversations are distant. Even anticipation feels softened, like excitement wrapped in cotton. I remind myself that this story has no need for sharp edges. Nothing is going to leap out. Nothing is going to demand quick decisions. If there is tension, it will arrive the way weather arrives, slowly, almost politely, noticed only after it has already changed the air. And so I make a small agreement with myself. I will move through the evening one moment at a time. I will not rush ahead to see what happens. I will not turn the story into a test. I will let it be what it is, a long, candlelit walk through manners and meanings, through quiet choices made with gloved hands and measured smiles. In this world, etiquette is not simply politeness. It is a map, and also a mask. It is a way of belonging, and sometimes a way of protecting oneself. I think of how a fan can become a sentence, how a glance can be a paragraph, how a pause, held just long enough, can say, I understand the rules, and I will not break them in public. Even when the heart wishes to run, the body learns to move with grace. Even when uncertainty flutters, the face learns to remain calm. That, too, is part of the choreography. I settle deeper into the feeling of preparation. Pins clicking softly. Fabric shifting. The hush of someone smoothing a sleeve. A door closing gently somewhere down a corridor. A carriage waiting outside, its wheels stilled for the moment, as if it, too, is breathing slowly, and when the time comes to step into the story's next room, I will do it in the same manner, quietly, steadily, with the kind of patience that makes sleep possible. Now the lights dim further in my imagination. The day grows farther away, like footsteps receding down a hallway. The ballroom waits, warm and bright in the distance, but for the moment I remain here, safe, still, and ready to drift. It is winter in Boston, in the year 1874, and I remember the cold first, the kind of cold that settles quietly into the streets and lingers there, patient and unmoving, as though the city itself has taken a slow breath and decided to hold it. Snow has fallen more than once this week, and the roads now carry the soft, packed tracks of carriage wheels and boots that have passed back and forth through the day. Gas lamps line the streets, their lights soft and slightly smoky, glowing through the evening like small golden moons. Each lamp trembles gently in the winter air, and the faint halos around them blur into the falling dusk. The wind carries the distant scent of the harbor, a quiet mixture of salt and cold iron, mingling with the darker smell of coal smoke rising from chimneys across the city. Boston moves more slowly in winter. Carriages roll carefully over the hardened snow, their wheels making a muted crunching sound. Shop doors open and close with brief bursts of warmth, letting out small clouds of steam from the breath of people inside. Somewhere down the street a horse stamps its hoof, sending a puff of white air into the night. Yet tonight the cold does not reach everywhere. Inside the Arlington Hotel, the air feels warmer, heavier, as though the building itself has gathered the heat of hundreds of candles and held it gently in its walls. Thick carpets soften every step. The scent of beeswax polish lingers faintly along the hallways, mixing with old wood and the quiet fragrance of pressed linen. The hotel is already awake with preparation. Servants move through the corridors with steady, practiced steps. Doors open, then close again with careful restraint. Somewhere far down the hall a tray of glasses gives a small, delicate clink as it is set into place, and beneath all of this, almost hidden in the distance, the faint sound of music begins to form, not a full melody yet. Only fragments. A violin tests a note, letting it rise slowly before drawing it back again. A second instrument answers softly, as if the two are quietly greeting each other in the empty room. The sounds are light and uncertain, drifting through the corridors like threads of silver sound. I know that they are warming the air for the evening. When I step into the ballroom itself, the space seems larger than I remembered. The ceiling lifts high above, and chandeliers hang in careful rows, each one holding dozens of small flames that shimmer gently in the polished glass. Candles brighten the corners of the room, and tall mirrors catch their light, sending it back across the walls in soft reflections that seem almost alive. Every movement of flame becomes a quiet flicker across the room, as though the light itself is breathing. The floor beneath my shoes is polished so smoothly that it reflects the glow above it. For a moment, it feels as if the ceiling and the floor are mirroring one another, the room suspended between two soft constellations of light. Soon the guests will arrive. Silk dresses will move across this floor in gentle arcs. Gloves will brush lightly against one another as hands meet in greeting. Voices will rise in polite conversation, carefully balanced between warmth and restraint. But for now, the ballroom still belongs to the quiet moment before everything begins. Chairs are arranged along the walls in neat rows. Tables wait with crystal bowls and silver trays. The musicians continue their patient preparation, letting the sound of their instruments slowly grow fuller, richer, more certain. I stand for a moment and watch the room breathe. A winter ball is about to begin, and though the evening will soon be filled with conversation, music, and the subtle dance of etiquette, there is something peaceful about this small pause before it all unfolds. The candles burn steadily, the mirrors glow. And the ballroom waits. In this world, I have learned that life moves through signals, not loud declarations, not sudden decisions, but small gestures that carry meaning quietly from one person to another. A letter folded carefully and sealed with wax. A visiting card left on a silver tray. A bow held just long enough to suggest respect, but not so long that it begins to feel like submission. These signals are everywhere, and over time they become as natural as breathing. When I first began to notice them, they felt complicated, almost mysterious. It seemed impossible that so many tiny rules could exist at once, each one guiding the tone of a conversation or the angle of a greeting. But the longer I lived inside this society, the more those rules became part of the rhythm of ordinary days. Morning often begins quietly. The curtains are drawn back to let in the pale winter light, and the house wakes slowly with the faint sounds of movement downstairs. Somewhere a kettle begins to warm. A door opens, then closes again. The air carries the familiar scent of polished wood and fresh linen. Letters arrive with the morning post. They are never hurriedly written. Each one carries careful handwriting, steady lines of ink that reveal as much about a person's character as the words themselves. A letter might contain a simple invitation, or a polite acknowledgement of a previous visit, yet everyone understands that the tone matters just as much as the message. A sentence can appear warm while still remaining distant. Another can seem perfectly formal while quietly offering kindness. In this way, communication becomes an art of balance. Visits, too, follow their own quiet choreography. No one arrives unexpectedly. A visit is arranged beforehand, often with a card delivered earlier in the day, announcing the intention gently so that the household can prepare itself. When the visitor arrives, the meeting is brief and polite, rarely lasting longer than 15 or 20 minutes. The purpose is not long conversation, the purpose is recognition. Clothing speaks its own language as well. A dress is never simply fabric. The cut of a sleeve, the color chosen for an afternoon call, the careful fastening of gloves before stepping outside, each detail offers a small message to those who know how to read it. Even the way a coat is folded over an arm can reveal a person's sense of order. In time, these details begin to feel natural. I find myself adjusting a cuff without thinking, smoothing a crease in my sleeve before entering a room, checking the neatness of a ribbon with the quiet awareness that someone might notice. None of this feels oppressive when it is shared by everyone around me. Instead, it becomes a kind of social music. Each person plays their part softly, responding to the gestures of others with equal care. A compliment is answered with modesty. A greeting is returned with warmth, but never too much warmth. Laughter appears, but it remains measured, shaped into a form that fits comfortably within the room. Even rest has its proper arrangement. Afternoons are often quieter, devoted to reading, embroidery, or the slow writing of letters. The household moves gently through these hours, each person occupied with their own tasks while still aware of the presence of the others. There is comfort in this steadiness. And as the weeks pass and the winter season deepens, a quiet anticipation begins to form throughout the city. Because everyone knows that the season of balls has arrived, families begin preparing long before the first invitations are sent. Dresses are altered. Gloves are selected with care. Carriages are arranged for the evenings when snow may fall again. The city itself seems to lean forward slightly, each household polishing its manners the way it polishes silver. Each young guest practicing introductions, rehearsing small courtesies, learning once again the delicate art of appearing both confident and modest at the same time, and somewhere within all of these preparations, I begin to understand something simple. Etiquette is not only about rules. It is about belonging to the quiet rhythm of a shared world. I am not alone in this evening, even before the carriage arrives, because the world around me is already full of quiet figures who shape the way I move. In our house, Martha is the first presence I feel, not because she speaks much, but because she seems to understand how to make the air orderly. She appears with warm water at the right hour, with a brush set down precisely where my hand will reach, with the steadiness of someone who has learned to keep her thoughts private while her hands remain exact. I notice the calmness of her work, the way she never rushes even when there is much to do, and I sense that her composure is its own kind of skill, as practiced as any waltz. When she adjusts a seam or smooths a sleeve, she does it with the quiet authority of experience, as if fabric itself will behave better under hands that do not hesitate. My aunt, Aunt Clara, is different, bright-edged in her certainty, always speaking as though the next step in life is a stair and we must place our feet correctly upon it. She treats invitations as proof that our family is still ascending, still present in the right rooms, still worth noticing. She is not cruel, not exactly, but she is vigilant, and her vigilance moves through the house like a clock that cannot be turned off. She reminds me of the proper hour to arrive, the proper way to decline a second helping, the proper degree of warmth when greeting a hostess whose influence is widely felt. When she says, "We must be seen," she means it as both encouragement and warning, because in her mind to be unseen is to be forgotten, and to be forgotten is to be vulnerable. And then there are the names that hover at the edge of my thoughts in the days leading to the ball, names spoken in drawing rooms as casually as weather, but carrying more weight than weather ever could. Mrs. Harrison Whitmore, the hostess tonight, sits at the center of that list. I have seen her only a handful of times, yet her reputation arrives before she does, so polished that it feels like a surface one could slip upon. She is said to be elegant, controlled, and observant, with a gaze that can measure a hem from across a room and still note the tremor in a voice during a simple introduction. People describe her smile as perfectly placed, neither too intimate nor too cold, and I find myself practicing my own in the mirror, trying to understand what it means to look gracious without appearing eager. Mr. Blake, visiting from Chicago, is another name that lingers, partly because he is new enough to be interesting, and partly because he is known for speaking politely while implying something sharper underneath, the way a winter wind can feel gentle until it finds the gap in a collar. I have heard that he never raises his voice, that he prefers to let a remark sit in the air and do its work by itself, and that makes me curious and cautious at once. Miss Emma Rose, from Baltimore, is spoken of in a softer tone, as though her presence is already a kind of secret. People say she smiles often but somehow never looks surprised, as if she has decided long ago that nothing in a ballroom is truly accidental. I imagine her watching the room the way a reader watches a page, turning each gesture into meaning, each pause into interpretation. And then there is James Carter, whose name does not arrive with the same sheen, because he is familiar, local, and earnest in a way that cannot be disguised. He means well, everyone agrees on that, yet he moves as if the world is always half a step too fast, as if he is hearing the music slightly after the rest of us. I have seen him flush over small mistakes, apologize too quickly, hold a door as though it might slam without his effort, and there is something almost comforting about his humanity, because it reminds me that perfection is not a natural state, it is a performance learned through repetition. These people are not villains or heroes. Not in the way stories sometimes demand. They are simply figures within a system, each one adapting to it, surviving it, sometimes benefiting from it, sometimes being pressed by it, the way all of us are shaped by the rooms we must enter. When I think of them together, I feel the ballroom forming itself long before we arrive, not just as a physical place with candles and mirrors, but as a living network of attention, expectation, and memory. Each person carries their own small history into the evening, and each carries a private hope as well, even if it is never spoken aloud. My hope is quieter than Aunt Clara's, less certain than Martha's calm hands, and yet it is there, that I can move through the night with steadiness, that I can speak when I should and remain silent when silence is safer, that I can take my place in the room without shrinking and without grasping, and that I can leave it later with my dignity intact, like a glove removed carefully and set away without a wrinkle. In the quiet hours before the evening begins, I start to feel the small pressure that lives beneath the elegance of this world. It is not the kind of pressure that arrives loudly or demands attention. Instead, it settles into the smallest corners of the day, the way winter cold slips through the narrowest seam of a window. I feel it when my aunt reminds me not to arrive too early, because eagerness, she says, is noticed, and being noticed in the wrong way can linger longer than a polite conversation. I feel it when Martha checks my gloves again, turning them carefully in the light as if they were delicate paper. A stain, she knows, is not simply a mark on fabric. In a room where people observe everything, it becomes a small story waiting to be told by someone else. This is how society moves, through observation, through interpretation, through the quiet creation of meaning from the smallest details. A ball, I have come to understand, is not merely an evening of music and dancing, it is an arrangement of eyes and memory. People watch without appearing to watch. They notice how long a greeting lasts, how gracefully a curtsy settles, how quickly a gentleman requests a second dance, how a hand lingers at the edge of a sleeve before withdrawing. No one writes these observations down, yet they travel through conversation afterward with surprising clarity. I imagine them drifting through parlors and breakfast tables the next morning, repeated with calm voices and careful phrasing. Someone will remember that a young woman laughed too freely. Someone else will recall that a gentleman seemed distant, or perhaps attentive in the wrong direction. None of it feels dramatic in the moment. The room continues smiling. The music continues playing. But beneath that pleasant surface, impressions are forming quietly, the way frost forms on glass while no one is looking. As I sit in the late afternoon light, waiting for the hour to arrive, I notice how this knowledge tightens my thoughts just slightly. It is not fear, exactly. It is something more delicate, like the awareness of balance when walking along a narrow path. One careless movement can draw attention, and attention, once drawn, rarely fades quickly. A misplaced smile might become a rumor carried lightly through the room. A missed introduction might suggest carelessness. Even an empty space on a dance card could invite quiet speculation, the kind that lingers long after the orchestra has packed away its instruments. And yet, the strange thing is that everyone participating in the evening understands these pressures. The rules exist for all of us. They create a shared language that both restricts and protects, because when everyone follows the same careful choreography, the evening remains smooth, graceful, almost serene. I remind myself that etiquette is not only a barrier. It can also be a shelter. Within its structure, mistakes can sometimes pass unnoticed, softened by politeness, hidden behind gentle laughter or a shift in conversation. The room itself seems to help preserve dignity. Still, as the daylight fades slowly against the winter windows, I can feel that quiet thread pulling tighter inside the hours before departure. The evening ahead is not dangerous, not truly. Yet it carries a weight of expectation that presses softly against the edges of thought. I think of how easily a sentence can be misread when it is repeated by someone who was not present for the tone, how easily a kindness can be turned into a claim, how easily a moment of shyness can be mistaken for disdain. Even compliments have their proper proportions, and praise must be offered like sugar, measured carefully, never poured. I have seen women who are perfectly pleasant become, in the mouths of others, either too proud or too eager, simply because their faces rested in the wrong expression for a heartbeat too long. I have seen men praised for confidence when they are simply loud, and I have seen quiet men overlooked as though silence were a flaw. These are not cruel intentions, always. Often they are habits, inherited like furniture, passed from one drawing room to the next. The city, the season, the ballroom, each has its own memory, and it prefers familiar shapes. And so I practice what can be practiced: steadiness, gentleness, the art of moving as if I belong even when a part of me is counting every step. I let my breath stay slow. I let my shoulders remain relaxed. I picture my expression as a calm surface of water that can hold reflections without being disturbed by them. Soon I will enter a room full of light, and that light will reveal more than fabric and jewels. It will reveal intentions, or at least what people decide my intentions must be. For now, the house remains quiet, holding the last peaceful moments before the careful performance of society begins, and I sit with the pressure without fighting it, letting it be no more than it is, an awareness, a thread, a gentle tightening that reminds me to move softly, to listen, to pause, to choose each small gesture as though it were a word in a language everyone understands. The day moves in steady stages. and I can almost hear it shifting from one hour to the next, like a careful hand turning pages. Morning arrives with the scrape of boots at the front step, the soft thud of coal being carried in, the hush of curtains drawn back just enough to let in a thin, winter light. Outside the windows, Boston looks pale and disciplined beneath snow, as if the city has agreed to speak more quietly until spring. Inside, the house begins its own gentle routine, warm in pockets and corners, cool along the glass. I rise without hurry, because haste is never admired, and because there is time, there is always time, so long as it is used properly. The first sounds are small ones, a pitcher set down, a brush lifted, a ribbon slid through fingers. I wash and dress in layers that feel familiar. Each one a private step toward the public self I will wear later. As I move, my thoughts float ahead and return again, like birds that do not wish to go far from home. By late morning, the household is busy in a quiet way that never looks like labor from the outside. It is a choreography of preparation that has been practiced so often it hardly needs words. Martha moves through it as though she can sense what will be needed before anyone asks. A warming pan appears near the hearth. Linen is folded. Shoes are checked. The air takes on that clean, faintly soapy scent that always means a day is being arranged with care. The post arrives, and with it the small, crisp sound of envelopes. Even if none are for me, I feel the importance of their presence. Letters make the world official. They record attention. They deliver invitations and acknowledgments and the polite expressions that allow a person to say much without revealing too much. Aunt Clara reads what comes with the calm focus of someone examining weather signs. Her mouth tightens or softens by degrees. I have learned to notice, and I understand, without her explaining, whether the day's social temperature has warmed or cooled. Midday passes with a light meal, not too much, never too rich, because the evening's appetite must remain in reserve, and because heaviness is considered a kind of carelessness. I sip tea and feel it settle warmth into my hands. I listen to Aunt Clara's reminders, each one spoken as if it is ordinary, though each one carries the weight of a rule. Do not arrive too early. Do not arrive too late. Do not speak too long to one person. Do not look as though you are searching. Do not look as though you are waiting. In her voice there is a belief that all of life can be steadied by correct timing, like music kept from falling apart by strict rhythm. Afternoon becomes a slow ritual, and the house seems to dim gently, as if it knows the evening will require its brightest hours. Water is warmed. Hairpins are set out. Fabric is laid across chairs like quiet, shining water. When Martha begins with my hair, the motion is patient, repetitive, soothing. The brush passes again and again, and each pass seems to smooth not only strands but thoughts. Pins click softly. A braid is folded, then secured, then checked once more. The rhythm of it feels like a promise that nothing will unravel if attended to carefully enough. My dress is lifted from its waiting place as though it is something delicate and alive. When I step into it, I become aware of how clothing changes posture, how it teaches the body what it must do. The fabric settles around me and asks for stillness. It asks for grace. It reminds me that I will be seen. Buttons are fastened with steady fingers, not tugged, not rushed. A ribbon is tied and retied until it lies in the proper shape. The smallest imperfections are corrected before they have the chance to become stories. As the light outside grows thinner and bluer, dusk arrives with that particular quiet that always comes before a public evening, like the city itself is holding its breath. The street sounds soften. The gas lamps begin their steady glow beyond the window, and their trembling halos make the snow look even more distant, even more unreal. Inside, the house takes on a feeling of pause, as if every room is listening for the moment when it will be time to leave. I stand for a while with my gloves in my hands, letting the stillness settle. It is strange how waiting can feel both calm and sharp at the same time. Calm, because the preparations are nearly complete. Sharp, because the next step leads into the bright, watchful room. I remind myself, again, that I do not have to perform perfection, only composure. I can breathe. I can move slowly. I can let my face stay gentle, even if my heart flutters like a small bird behind a closed door. Aunt Clara appears in the doorway, already dressed, already certain. She looks me over in one practiced sweep, and I feel the quiet judgment of her gaze, not unkind, but precise. When she nods, it is as though a latch has clicked into place. We are ready. We are acceptable. We may proceed, and then, at last, the house signals that the day has turned. The carriage wheels are heard outside, muffled by snow. The driver's voice is low and businesslike. The front door opens, letting in a brief breath of winter air that smells of cold iron and night. Martha helps with my cloak, smoothing it so it falls cleanly, as though even warmth must be arranged elegantly. My gloves slide on, and the soft pressure at my wrists feels like the closing of a chapter. I step toward the door with a calm I do not fully feel, and yet I carry it anyway, like a lantern held steady even when the hand trembles. The day, with all its quiet stages, has brought me here. And now the evening waits, bright and measured, just beyond the threshold. I stand near the tall mirror as the final preparations come to an end. The room behind me feels quiet, but not empty. It carries the gentle sounds of evening readiness, the soft rustle of fabric, the faint creak of a floorboard, the distant clink of something being set carefully on a tray. Martha stands behind me, tying the last ribbon at the back of my dress. Her fingers move slowly and with certainty, the way someone's hands move when they have repeated the same task 100 times before. She does not speak much while she works. She rarely needs to. There is a calm in her silence that makes the room feel steadier. For a moment she pauses, not long, only long enough to smooth a wrinkle along my sleeve with the flat of her hand. The gesture is small, but gentle, and something in that small care feels almost personal. It reminds me that this evening, with all its expectations and quiet rules, is still made of ordinary human moments. I catch Martha's reflection in the mirror. Her expression is composed, thoughtful, perhaps even a little proud of the work she has done. "There," she says softly at last, "the ribbon lies perfectly in place." I thank her, and she nods once, satisfied. Aunt Clara enters the room soon after, her steps confident, her posture already carrying the calm authority she will bring with her into the ballroom. She pauses just inside the doorway and studies me the way a careful gardener studies a plant before presenting it to visitors. Her eyes move from my hair to my gloves, then to the hem of my dress. For a brief moment she says nothing, then she gives a small nod of approval. "You'll do well tonight," she says. Her voice is not dreamy or encouraging in the way people sometimes try to be comforting. It is steady, almost practical, as if she is offering a simple fact rather than a hope, and strangely, that steadiness helps. I pick up my fan from the small table near the window. The ivory ribs open with a quiet flutter, like the wings of a pale bird. I close it again carefully and hold it in both hands. It feels like an object that may soon become useful, though I cannot yet say why. When we step into the hallway, the house seems different from how it felt earlier in the day. The lamps are lit now, and their warm glow softens the corners of the walls. Shadows stretch gently along the carpet. The front door opens. A breath of winter air slips inside, cool and clean. Outside, the carriage waits beneath the dim halo of a gas lamp. The horse exhales a cloud of steam that rises slowly into the cold night. The driver sits quietly, wrapped in his coat, his posture patient and unmoving. Snow along the street reflects the lamplight with a faint, silver brightness. Aunt Clara steps forward first, her movements practiced and efficient. I follow carefully, lifting my skirt just enough to keep the hem clear of the snow. The carriage door closes with a soft, solid sound. Inside, the world becomes smaller and warmer. The velvet seat cushions the movement as we settle. The lantern outside casts a faint glow through the window glass. For a moment, neither of us speaks. The quiet is not uncomfortable. It feels like the pause before music begins. I hold my fan loosely in my hands, feeling the smooth polish of the ivory beneath my gloves. My thoughts move slowly, drifting between anticipation and calm. Excitement would be too strong a word, but there is something within me that feels awake, attentive, willing. The driver signals to the horse. The carriage begins to move. The wheels roll gently over the snow-packed street, and the house fades behind us into the quiet winter evening. Ahead, somewhere across the city, the ballroom waits with its light, its music, and its careful language of glances and gestures. And as the carriage carries us forward, I sit quietly in the dim glow of the window, feeling the night slowly opening before us. The ride is not fast, and I am grateful for that. The carriage moves with a slow, rocking patience over the snow-packed streets, as if the whole city has agreed to cushion the night. Each jolt is softened by velvet seats and the layered weight of my clothing, and the motion begins to feel like a lullaby that does not need melody, only repetition. Through the window, Boston slides by in blurred shapes. Gas lamps pass one by one, their halos trembling in the cold air. Fences appear and vanish. Bare trees stand in dark lines against the pale ground, their branches thin and still, as though they are listening. At a corner, I glimpsed the dim outline of a street vendor closing a cart, folding canvas with stiff fingers, moving slowly as if even work must yield to winter. The scene fades as we roll onward, and the glass turns it all into a quiet watercolor of light and shadow. Inside the carriage, I hold my fan the way one holds an object that belongs to another life, an elegant tool for a room that has not yet opened around me. The ivory feels cool beneath my gloves. I turn it once in my hands, not opening it, simply feeling its shape, the smooth ribs, the small hinge that could flutter like a wing if I asked it to. Then I let it rest again, as though even my hands have learned not to make unnecessary movements. Aunt Clara sits opposite me, composed and still. Her gaze is directed toward the window, but I sense she is not truly watching the street. She is thinking ahead, measuring the evening before it happens, reviewing names and sequences and the invisible rules that keep a woman safe in a room full of light. Her silence feels intentional, like a closed book kept neat until the proper hour. I listen to the sounds that surround us. The muffled crunch of wheels. The occasional snort of the horse, followed by a small chime of harness. Somewhere, far off, I hear a door close and a brief burst of laughter spill into the cold before being swallowed again. The city is not asleep, not yet, but it is quieting, drawing its shoulders up against the night. My thoughts drift the way fog drifts, quietly, without argument. I notice how the mind loosens when it is given something steady to follow. The rocking of the carriage becomes a gentle metronome. The passing lamps become slow markers of time. Each one says, a little farther, a little nearer, without demanding excitement. I remind myself of the simplest secret of etiquette, the one that matters before all the others. Move slowly. Breathe gently. Let my face stay calm even if my heart wants to run. The rules in the ballroom may be many, but this first one feels like a key. If I can remain unhurried, I can remain readable in the right way, composed, steady, untroubled, and yet, beneath that calm intention, there is a smaller truth I do not say aloud. I want to do well. Not in the dramatic sense of triumph, not as though the evening is a competition, but in the quiet sense of leaving no easy opening for gossip or judgment. I want to be remembered kindly, or at least neutrally. I want my name to pass through other people's mouths without sharpening into something unpleasant. In this society, that is a kind of success, moving through the room like a smooth note in a piece of music, present but not disruptive. The carriage turns, and for a moment the window shows the dark suggestion of the harbor's direction, the air seeming colder there, the night more open. Then the street narrows again into familiar lines of buildings and lamplight, and the warmth inside our carriage feels more precious by comparison. I draw one slow breath and let it out, feeling it brush quietly past my lips, as if even breath must behave tonight. Soon, I know, the Arlington Hotel will appear ahead like a warm lantern in the cold. I can almost imagine it already, the bright windows, the sheltered entrance, the promise of heat and music and polished floors waiting beyond thick doors. My body responds with a small tightening. Not fear exactly, but readiness, the way a hand steadies itself before lifting a cup filled close to the rim. I let the readiness exist without feeding it. I let the rocking motion carry me. I let the city continue to pass like a slow river of winter scenes. In the dim glass, my reflection is faint, just a suggestion of pale fabric and pinned hair, a calm outline shaped by candlelight that has not yet touched me. The carriage rolls onward, and the night widens softly around us. Each lamp we pass feels like a quieter thought. Each moment feels a little more settled. And somewhere ahead, behind warm doors and bright mirrors, the ballroom waits, ready to translate every small gesture into meaning. Ready to hold me in its light, ready to begin. At last the carriage begins to slow. The rocking motion that had carried us gently through the city grows softer, more deliberate, until the wheels roll forward with the careful patience of arrival. Through the window I see a glow spreading across the street ahead, warmer and brighter than the quiet lamps we have been passing. The Arlington Hotel stands before us like a lantern in the winter night. Light spills from its tall windows and stretches across the snow in long golden shapes. Shadows of people move behind the glass, drifting slowly back and forth as if the building itself has come alive with motion. The carriage stops. For a moment nothing happens. And that brief stillness feels almost ceremonial. I hear the horse shift its weight and exhale a soft cloud into the cold air. Then the door opens. Winter slips in again, cool and sharp, brushing lightly against my cheeks as I step down onto the street. The snow beneath my shoes is firm and quiet. Above the entrance, gas lamps burn steadily, their flames trembling inside tall glass housings. A footman stands nearby, calm and attentive, guiding arriving guests with practiced ease. I follow Aunt Clara up the short set of steps, lifting my skirt carefully so the hem does not brush the snow. The heavy doors open before us, and the warmth inside meets the cold like a gentle wave. Immediately the air changes. The scent of beeswax, polished wood, and faint perfume replaces the crisp smell of winter. Voices move through the hallway in soft currents of conversation. Coats and cloaks are taken with quiet efficiency. For a moment I stand beneath the lamps of the entrance hall, allowing my eyes to adjust. The marble floor reflects the glow of the chandeliers above, and the sound of music reaches us from somewhere deeper in the building. Not loud, not overwhelming, just the steady rise and fall of strings warming the evening. Guests move past us in graceful rhythms, gentle bows, polite greetings, murmured introductions. Silk rustles like soft wine through tall grass. Gloves brush lightly together as hands meet. It feels as though the entire room is speaking a language that everyone understands without raising their voice. Aunt Clara inclines her head slightly, acknowledging a familiar face. I follow her example, remembering the small lessons she has repeated for years. Never stare, never rush. Let every movement seem natural. We pass through the corridor and approach the wide doors of the ballroom itself. They are already open. Light pours through them in a bright, shimmering glow, and with it comes the fuller sound of the orchestra beginning its first proper melody of the evening. For a moment I pause just before stepping inside, not because I must, but because something in the moment asks for it. The threshold feels like a quiet border between two worlds, the calm preparation of the evening behind me, and the bright social theater waiting ahead. I take a slow breath, then I step forward. The ballroom opens around me. Candles blaze from high chandeliers, scattering warm reflections across tall mirrors that line the walls. The polished floor gleams beneath dozens of moving figures, each one turning and gliding in careful patterns. The music fills the air with steady elegance. Conversations weave together like threads of silk, soft laughter here, a greeting there, the polite rhythm of introductions unfolding across the room. Mrs. Harrison Whitmore stands near the center of it all, greeting her guests with the perfect balance of warmth and composure. When Aunt Clara leads me toward her, I feel the quiet weight of attention gather for a moment. Her smile appears measured and welcoming. I answer with the same careful grace I practiced earlier. The exchange lasts only a few seconds, yet within those seconds, the evening truly begins. Someone nearby offers a glass of punch. Someone else speaks briefly about the weather, as though winter itself were a topic worthy of reflection. Miss Emma Rose appears among a small circle of guests, her calm expression exactly as people described, and slowly, gently, the dances begin. Names are written onto dance cards. Gloved hands meet, music rises, the ballroom settles into its graceful rhythm, and I find myself moving within it, one careful step at a time. Hour by hour, the evening softens at the edges. The bright certainty of the ballroom begins to relax into something quieter, more human. Candles burn a little lower in their tall holders, their flames bending gently whenever a door opens to the corridor. The music, once lively and precise, now moves at an easier pace, as though the orchestra itself has grown comfortable in the warmth of the room. I notice how the guests change as the night deepens. Faces that once held careful composure now carry small signs of weariness. Laughter becomes warmer, less measured. Even the most graceful dancers allow their shoulders to rest between songs. For a little while, the rules loosen their grip. And within that softening, the evening feels kinder. Thank you for staying with me as we wandered through the quiet glow of the Victorian Ballroom, where candlelight trembled against tall mirrors and every graceful movement carried a quiet meaning. If this gentle journey through the secrets of etiquette in the Victorian Ballroom brought you a sense of calm, you are warmly welcome to like and subscribe for more peaceful stories of history to accompany your nights. Rest deeply now. Keep a small sense of wonder for the quiet languages of the past, the soft rustle of silk, the careful rhythm of a waltz, the unspoken kindness hidden within simple manners. And as the last candles fade and the ballroom doors close softly behind us, let the stillness of the night carry you into calm, untroubled sleep.